Welcome back to Pagitt Radio on AM 950, because the voice of Minnesota, and PagittRadio.com. You know, over the last half a year or so, we've been having a conversation here on religious radio that's not quite right radio network about the role of presidential politics and its influence and effect on religion, and the other way around, the effect of religion on presidential politics.
Yes.
And I've been suggesting that evangelicals are going to have a very hard time making a choice for either Mitt Romney or Rick Santorum because of religious convictions.
Yeah, the lesser of the two cults.
And I've been suggesting that for many evangelical people, their thoughts about Mormons are not positive.
No.
And it's starting to show up. And many people in the press have been reluctant to want to call that out because it sounds as if they're saying about evangelicals, well, hey, look, these evangelicals, it sounds like the press is making a story where there isn't one. But as it turns out, I think there really is a story here, and I'm not making that up. I hear that from the spokespeople of evangelical Christianity, and I hear that showing up in some polls. Well, McKay Coppins, who is a writer for BuzzFeed, he used to be with Newsweek, the Daily Beast, is our guest, and McKay is covering this, and he wrote a little article last week about how evangelicals in Illinois didn't turn out for Romney, and I thought brought this up. And McKay, so glad to have you on the show. Thanks for being on with us this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Doug.
Yeah, I want to ask you about a couple of things. One is about this story and all that went into reporting it. And then also, I want to chat with you about what's it like to be someone who covers presidential primary politics, because it sounds interesting to me as someone who's sort of a political nerd to think about someone getting to chase around and see the inner workings of all of this. So if it's okay with you, we'll chat about both those things. So McKay, tell us what you do and about what BuzzFeed is. I'm new, like a lot of people, to BuzzFeed in like the last 4 or 5 months, but it's a really great news aggregator. So can you make a little pitch for that before we get into the details?
Yeah, sure. So BuzzFeed has been around for a while, but mostly just as an aggregator of kind of online videos and pictures. And then back in January, they brought on Ben Smith from Politico, who they brought on as editor-in-chief to kind of build a news organization on top of that. So he's hired a bunch of reporters, and I cover the Romney campaign, and just like everyone else, the New York Times, Washington Post, on down, I'm on the bus with the Romney campaign most of the time, following him around the country. And we built a really good politics section. We also cover sports and tech and a lot of other areas. So check it out, BuzzFeed.com. Yeah, that's what we do. I'll
tell you, I've really become a fan of it in the last couple of months, and I think that it's great. I like the way the news is delivered, and I like the perspective that all of you have. So you're covering the Romney campaign, and you yourself are a Mormon. So is that the reason they asked you to be the one to cover this, that maybe the Romney campaign
you speak Mormon?
Yeah,
is that what it is?
Because I speak Mormon.
Yeah. Is that the reason, or is that just a coincidence that you're a top shelf reporter, and as it turns out, the Romney fit was a good one for you, or what was the?
Well, yeah, I was covering the politics in general at Newsweek and the Daily Beast, and throughout conversations with Ben coming over to BuzzFeed, he was interested, in. He had been following my work for a while, most of which wasn't about Romney or Mormonism or anything. But when he asked me, where I would be interested in, what campaigns I'd be interested in covering, certainly Romney was one that I've had my eye on. And I don't think that the campaign has given me any special access or anything because of my religion. But I do think there is something to the idea that I speak Mormon. I think that the fact, being fluent in this culture and understanding kind of the intricacies and nuances of the doctrine. I understand a lot about where Mitt Romney's coming from that a lot of other reporters covering him don't quite pick up on. Okay. And so
come on.
I do think there's something there.
You know, like secret handshakes or passwords and stuff. I mean, that's...
Right, yeah.
You got that Boy Scout. You got that Boy Scout handshake, right?
That's right, exactly.
Okay, and one of the things that I appreciate about your coverage generally about this campaign about Mormonism is you raise when there are times when people make slights or when news coverage or reporters make little sort of attacks or digs against Mormonism generally, and you do a nice job of kind of raising that awareness that there are times when Mormonism is allowed to be disparaged in a tone and in a way that if you did that with other religious expressions, people would decry that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that my editor, Ben Smith, also shares. Both of us have done that. And I think it's just part of the process. Mormonism is a fairly young faith. And so just like Catholicism had to go through this a while ago. And frankly, evangelical Christians still face this a lot from the left.
That's right.
I think that we're unfairly targeted in ways that, like you said, would not be okay if you replace Mormon with Jew, for example.
Right.
So we do try to call that out when we see it, and that's part of the conversation that we're having around Mitt Romney.
And one of the interesting things for people to know who don't follow religion and politics quite so closely is that there are people of Mormon tradition and Mormon currently expressing Mormon faith who come on many sides of the political spectrum. Harry Reid is a Mormon. Conservatives like Romney are Mormons. So it's not like other religious traditions where if you're part of that religious tradition, you can assume a political perspective.
Right, sure. And I mean, Mormon, I think, surveys and polls show that Mormonism traditionally has been a more politically conservative faith, although that's changing. As the church continues to grow and as Mormonism continues to grow and diversify, there are, like you said, I mean, Harry Reid is the prime example. There are a lot of liberals, there are conservatives, there are a lot of centrists. You really can't make political assumptions based on somebody's faith, especially in Mormonism.
Now, to the conversation from your article of I think it was last Thursday, the headline was, "Even an Illinois blowout, evangelicals won't vote for Mitt," was the title of the story. And one of the reasons this becomes important is over the last 30 years, a new demographic of someone's religious affiliation declaring themselves to be an evangelical has come into the mix as a demographic importance. So, and in the Bush elections of 2000, 2004, especially, that became really significant, where the Bush campaign targeted evangelicals very expressly and tried to court them. And the Obama campaign tried to court evangelicals very aggressively in 2008, especially younger progressive evangelicals. So it has been an important part of the last dozen years of presidential campaigns, which is part of what makes it important in this election. So tell us what it was that caused you to write this article saying, look, we've noticed that in Illinois, Romney just can't seem to lock in that evangelical vote the way that other campaigns tried to do.
Sure. Well, I mean, this has been a problem for Mitt Romney over the course of the entire primary. I mean, every state you go, you see that whoever the current not Romney candidate is tends to get more evangelicals than Romney does. What was interesting, especially in Illinois, is that was a state where you really saw a lot of different sections of the Republican Party start to coalesce behind Romney. Early exit polls showed him beating Rick Santorum among voters who self-identified as conservative, voters who support the Tea Party, and even people making less than $50,000 per year. All of those groups are groups that Mitt Romney has struggled with in the past, but in Illinois you saw them all start to get behind him. The one really lone holdout here, the one Republican faction that still wouldn't get on the Romney bandwagon, was a demographic that exit polls identified as white evangelical Christian.
Yeah.
So that's what made Illinois so interesting to me, is that even as everybody else in the party appeared to start to coalesce behind the front runner, you still saw evangelical Christians by a fairly good margin, 46 to 39% support Santorum, and among those who said a candidate's religion mattered, quote, a great deal, Santorum kind of crushed Romney by 20 points.
By 20 points. And that's intriguing,
right,
because the Republicans had tried over the Bush administration and even through the 90s and so on to try to make a claim that if evangelicals want to vote for someone, then they should vote for someone with their same religious convictions. And evangelicals are saying, well, a Mormon doesn't accomplish that goal. Do they talk about this in the Romney campaign, as far as you can tell? Do you hear about it on the bus? Do you hear about it amongst the other political reporters who are trying to find the edges of the stories and not just be the spokespeople for the campaign directly?
Sure. I mean, the press, the reporters who follow the Romney campaign are very aware of this. And when you talk to the campaign, it's sort of the elephant in the room, right? Nobody wants to come out and say, yeah, we have a huge problem with the religious base of this party,
right.
Conservative evangelicals. No one wants to say that. But, in various off-the-record conversations, they'll acknowledge that it's a problem. They're kind of banking on the fact that Romney will win the nomination, and then when they get to the general, evangelicals will turn out for Romney as opposed to Obama because, conservatives still, even if they don't like Mormonism, they may. Romney's camp is hoping they hate Obama more than that.
Yeah, well, after the break, I want to ask you sort of your own read on that. If you think that that's true, or will evangelicals sort of not turn out, or will there be some third candidate that social conservatives and religious evangelicals try to get behind, or sort of what you think will happen out of that? So after the break, can you stick around, because I want to ask you about that, and then a couple of good stories from you about what it means to cover a presidential campaign in this way and travel on the bus and sort of give us the inside scoop. Are you able to do that, or are these all secrets that you have to keep amongst the elite of the bus traveling press crew?
I'll find something good to tell you.
Okay, great. Hey, folks, if you want to follow up on this story, it's on BuzzFeed. You can find it there on BuzzFeed, or if you go over to the Doug Pagitt radio page on Facebook, you'll find a link to it there. McKay Coppins is our guest, and he's a traveling reporter for BuzzFeed and covering the Romney campaign. We're asking the question that he raised in his article: why is it that white evangelicals are not voting for Romney, and what's going to be the impact of that? Here on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and DougPagittRadio.com.